Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's the Absolutely Live interview. I'm your host, Greg M. Tonight we've got a special guest. It's Brandon Santini. He is one of the, I would say, trifecta of young blues harp players out there. Currently on tour and, just trucking across the country and across the world, doing his own brand of blues. And I could tell you that over the last week or so, I've been really getting into his music, and I got to tell you, I really enjoy it. I love blues, as you guys know, and I love all different types of blues. Like, you've got different regional types of blues and stuff like that. And I like more aggressive blues. I like middle of the road blues. I like kind of chill blues, like old school blues. And so Brandon, in my opinion, Brandon fits into that, like between kind of like the old schoolish blues into like the middle of the road blues. I would say, to me, he's not like overly aggressive, which is perfectly fine because it goes really well with his type of blues. So I see that Brandon's on. He sent me a request. I'm going to go ahead and accept that request, but I'm really excited to talk to him. So here we go. For a bit until January, and I just hope everyone has a great holiday. And
Here I am.
I'm excited to talk to Brandon. Hey, man.
Good.
How you doing?
Let me get my big old face
It's
and
good to see
hat
you.
in this thing here. Yeah,
That's
so
what
bear
I'm
with me.
trying to do.
You should see the setup
No
I
problem,
have
man.
here to make this happen. So let me just. There we go. How's that? That'll work for this, right? Yeah. Get to
That's
see all the
great.
gray.
Yeah, it's
I'm
really
doing good, man. Thanks for
So how you
having me.
doing?
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, no problem. I really appreciate you being on, man. I was so excited to have you. I don't know if you saw my previous shows, but I had like you're the third of like the trifecta of the currently like reigning awesome harmonica players
Thank
out
you
there.
so
So I'm
much.
really
Good to
happy
be here. I
about
know
that.
you had Dennis Grinling on, and he's man, what a beast, huh?
I did. He's a beast. Yeah.
Wow.
But you're no slouch, man. I'll tell you what. You and Jason and him, man, you make up like my trifecta of
You so
awesome
much.
harp players out there. No
Good,
problem,
man. I'm
man.
getting
So how
over
you
this
doing?
little
Everything good?
sickness. Had a little cold that's going around. I think everybody's getting it. And yeah, so
They are.
but today it's the first day I've felt good in quite a while. So everything's cool. We're setting up for next
Good,
year,
good. I'm glad.
and we're not really on the road much right now, but yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Did you get a chance at all to see some of the
I got to
other
skim through some
interviews at
of them,
all, or not really?
specifically Dennis. Dennis Grinley's a buddy
Cool.
of mine, and
Good.
you mentioned him and Jason
Good.
Ricci. They're both, if it weren't for guys like that, there would be no me.
Yes. Correct. Yeah. I'm sure of that. I mean, you're like one of the younger guys out
I
there. I
have
think you're
40
in your
now.
late
Yeah,
30s.
yeah,
And I looked on
yeah.
your website.
This
Are you really?
this
You're
doesn't show. This
40
doesn't
now?
tell the story.
Yeah. I was looking through your website, and yeah, you had mentioned
Yeah,
Dennis
sure.
over there, James Cotton, obviously, Butterfield. I know
Oh yeah.
Butter's a big influence for Jason, and I know that Cotton's a big influence for him, and also for Jason and for yourself. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you listen to your sound, you could totally pick out the guys that you're
Sure.
influenced by, which is really awesome. So I'm interested to know, and I always start off all my interviews pretty much with like the same kind of question, and then we go from there. Like, what brought you to where you are today? Like, how did you figure that you wanted to be a blues harp player? Like,
I
where
grew
did
up in
you
North
start off?
Carolina, and I was 15 years old, and of course this was the mid 90s. I was born in 82, so really fell in love with the way John Popper, blues traveler, played harmonica.
Oh
So
yeah,
I'd never really heard it
yeah,
played in that kind of style. I'd heard always, Neil Young and Bob Dylan, of course, and in the 90s
yeah,
there was Alanis Morissette, of
yeah,
course, but I remember hearing blues traveling
yes,
in the mid 90s, and that really just caught my ear. And I remember buying a
yeah,
live CD, and it said that John Popper plays Hohner Special 20 harmonicas. And so it was kind of the light bulb moment for me. And I asked my mom, I was 15,
yeah,
I asked her to take me to the music store, and so I bought a Hohner Special 20, and
Cool.
that's what really took me down the road of finding out about Paul Butterfield, James Cotton, all those guys, the real
Yep.
blues players, and Popper's
Oh
more of
yeah.
a admittedly a jazz, bebop, and rock kind of guy, and mixed with a little blues, and
Yep.
but yeah, that's what took me on the path.
Now, when you realized that this was something that you wanted to do, like, were you just how old were you again
15.
when you first got your
Yeah.
first harmonica? 15. Okay. So, when you realized, all right, I'm going to take this thing and try and figure it out, did you have anyone to help you along, or you just kind of like
Uh,
looked at it, played
no,
with
it
it,
was
and figured it
that was
out?
pre-YouTube days, and so there really were no
Yeah.
formal lessons, and it was just me listening by ear, and really regrettably trying to run before I could even crawl, and try to emulate guys like John
I'm
Popper. But
sure.
you know, there as I got a little bit older, I started, when YouTube came along. There's a lot of great lessons, and I learned a lot from that. But I think for me, it was mainly just listening and getting a lot of stage experience, and that's what kind of
Yeah.
got me. Yeah,
On open
there were, and
mics,
people were really
assuming.
generous with me in their bands, and letting this young guy with his his misery whistle harmonica to come up and play and give me an opportunity. So it was really a good opportunity for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Did you, when you first went out there and after the open mics and everything, and you got a feel for it, and you were like, okay, I like being on stage. I'm assuming you felt like, hey, this is
Mhm.
something that I really want to do. Did you kind of like have anybody in your area that was into the blues, or did you feel kind of isolated? Like, okay, this is kind of a a genre that not a lot of people find popular right now. But how did you kind of navigate those
Yeah,
waters and then figure
yeah.
out where to
There
go
were
with that?
some weekend blues bands, weekend warriors around where I grew up in North Carolina, and there was really it's really
Yeah.
not per se an instructor or a harmonica player that I would go and sneak in the back door and watch at underage at a bar. No, none of those good stories. But when I got to Memphis in 2003, Billy Gibson, who was a fantastic harmonica player out of Memphis, I would catch him on
Uh-huh.
Beale Street quite a bit, and so I learned a lot from him, probably more
Wow.
than he even knows. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's awesome. So what kind of songs were you influenced by, like right when you started? Like, did you start off? I know that you were just saying that's kind of like a little bit difficult, I guess, to get started. But what kind of music were you listening to as far as like trying to figure out your way? Figure out what
Right.
sort of blues you
Well,
wanted to go and
yeah,
do.
there
There's a
are.
bunch of different
There's a
types of
ton.
blues.
I always loved the, of course, North Mississippi Hill Country blues. That always, caught my ear. The guy
Yeah.
Chicago sound, the amplified harmonica sound out of Chicago, and then Delta. And then I kind of moved on to into the West Coast harmonica players, the swing guys like William Clark and.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it kind of was, I come from more of a rock and roll background. That's what I was raised on, rock and roll,
Hmm.
and so I always loved, things that had a little more edge to them, and I think that's always stuck with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, like, I was thinking on my way, I was just driving back here, and I was thinking, and I think I said this to Dennis too, like, harmonica is such an interesting instrument because it's kind of like, you pick up a guitar and, you can play and stuff, and not everyone sounds the same, but it's the same thing with harmonica. It's like, when you hear your style and, you're kind of like, at least in my ear, you're kind of like a traditional
Hmm.
blues sound. I don't know if that's
Oh,
what you're
sure,
going for, but that's
yeah,
that's what I got from your recordings. You- yeah, you don't go too like far from the left or the right, and then you hear a guy like Dennis who like goes full bore. And then you hear
right,
Jason who's like on the other edge of the spectrum, right? And he's like
yeah,
off the wall, rock almost,
right.
teetering on the edge of blues to rock mostly. But like, how do you feel about your own sound? Like, do you feel like you're being
Well,
true to the
I,
masters that you listen to? Is that what you
yeah,
wanted
well,
when
I
you set out to
definitely,
do it?
I
Is that
feel
what
like
you
I'm on
wanted?
earth to play blues music, and traditional blues is always going to be
Yeah.
ingrained in me. It's always going to be what I really, love when it comes down to it. At the end of the day, it's traditional blues. But having said that, the John Popper influence, and then the Jason Ritchie influence, guys like that, and then the rock and roll influence. Some of my stuff, I try to. Some of it, you may hear me try to go out of the box a little bit, but I never really learned
Hmm.
music theory and stuff as much as guys like Jason and Dennis. But I love playing around with effects pedals too at times. But I think for
Yeah.
me, it's
Yeah.
more of I think the traditional thing is more natural to me, and I think
Yeah.
living in Memphis really helped with that. Spending time in Mississippi, and I really love, I just love the traditional stuff. But I love to.
Well, you're really, really great at it. I mean, honestly, you really are. There's, it's a nice niche that you're in. It really is, and I think you represent it well. Being a guy, I was in a blues band for a while, like a bunch of blues bands, and like coming from that side of it, and I really
Thanks, man. Thank
appreciate
you.
your playing. I really do. Yeah, it's very, it's right in line with
Sure.
where it should
Thanks,
sound, I
man.
guess. Is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, no problem. I wanted to ask you too, like when you're looking for players, right? When you started, did you start your first band, or did you go
Yeah,
into a band
I
that was
pretty
already
much,
existing?
I kind of was with hanging out with jam bands actually growing up as well. I probably should have mentioned
Yeah.
that a little earlier. I had friends who were in more of the jam scene in the
Okay.
college town where I grew up in North Carolina, in Burlington. Um, so I was playing a lot with those
Yeah.
guys as well as playing, some blues guys. But um, I started my own band with some of these guys, and it was, you know, it wasn't me singing at the time. It was a band we called Reverend Jenkins Blues Project. And I got that from a bumper sticker. There was no
Nice.
Reverend Jenkins in the band, but I just saw a Reverend Jenkins, elect Reverend Jenkins to Congress or something on a bumper sticker. So yeah, I got those guys together, and we played a few years, and then we decided to break that band up, and then pretty much from then on out, I was always fronting my own band. So I guess, yeah,
Yeah. 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 I was
yeah,
reading about Delta Highway. How
it was
was that? I mean,
great,
did you have
man.
a great time doing that?
That was the band I
Yeah.
started in North Carolina. The guitar player and I moved to
Mhm.
Memphis in 2003, and he stuck around for about 3 weeks. We didn't become an overnight sensation like somehow he thought we would. So he left after three
No.
weeks, and I kind of just
Wow.
navigated the waters, and he ended up moving back about 2 years later, and that's when the band really started taking off, and we were in the International Blues Challenge, and we started getting out on the road and
Nice.
touring, and we were in our 20s, and it was a lot of fun, and we were learning a lot of stuff, and learning what to do, what not to
Yeah.
do, and then meeting a lot of great musicians, and it was a great experience. It's too bad that band couldn't keep it together. That band lasted maybe about 10 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's really good.
I know,
That's an
right?
eternity for a band. When you surround yourself with players, like what kind of things are you looking for in bandmates? Anything from like, hey, can we get along personally to musically? Like
Well,
what kind of
I
things do
think
you look for as a band
people
leader?
who have good attitudes is the number one thing. You can be the greatest musician, but if we're not going to get along, and if you're, turning people off and just being a jerk, then it's not going to work. So I like guys who, obviously can
Yeah.
play well, but they don't have to be the greatest player. If they're a great person off the
Yeah.
stage, then it's going to help a lot more. Because I'm a very laid back guy for the most part, and like
Absolutely.
to keep it light. So, but
Yeah.
if we can't get along, then there's an issue. So
Right. Right. And the guys that are in your band now, I mean, how long has this current
wow.
group
So my
of
guitar
guys been
player,
together?
Timo Arthur, he joined the band in 2014, and so he's been
Hmm.
around for a while now. Jeff Cunningham on
Yeah.
bass, he's been in since 2018, and my drummer Ron James, 2018 as well. Those two guys came on about the same time. Yeah.
Awesome. Did you have any issues like cycling through guys to find these guys? I mean, I know how hard it is when
Right.
you are trying to find bandmates. I mean, it's a difficult challenge sometimes, and like you're saying,
Right.
the attitudes don't really mesh up or whatever. But it's hard.
Yeah.
I've been experienced it. It's rough. But and when you get
You're
that
right,
group, it's like wow,
man.
you just want to hold on to them forever. But has it been difficult at all
I've been
cycling
really
through guys,
fortunate, really
or not
blessed with
really?
that. People have stuck with me for quite a while, or someone will. I'll be able to find someone relatively easily if someone's leaving the band and so forth. So I'm always thankful, and I tell people that I'm really really blessed in that way. Very fortunate. I haven't because I don't really care to go through that cycle and have a show that's kind of loose. A lot of guys, and not to discredit anyone, especially in the blues world, they'll hire
Yeah.
just pick up bands they from town to town, things like that, and for
Right.
what we do, it just wouldn't work because I get too spoiled too spoiled with these good guys. But the guys I have now are just great. I
Yeah.
think this is the best band that I've had on stage with me.
That's awesome. And like when you go out on touring, are you the one who's setting everything up, or do you have an agency that sets up all your tours and everything, or you pretty much
Yeah, right
self
now I'm pretty
self
much doing
control?
everything. I've had booking agencies throughout throughout my career, and right now it's just one of those things that I can do myself. And I do have a
Yeah,
booking agency that small agency out of Chicago that helps with certain things, but I pretty much do it all. One man operation. My guys, they play music, get in the van, and get paid, and I just try to make sure that that keeps on going, and that I'm able to keep those guys busy as well as myself.
yeah, no kidding. And do you find like a certain like feeling of accomplishment with that? I mean, keeping these guys employed. I
Yeah,
mean, that's a big deal. You know what I mean?
right.
Because you're pretty much their employer. So that's rough. So how does that lay on you at all? Or does
No,
it? Or
it
are you just
certainly
like, hey man,
does. I
I'm
always want to
chill.
keep them busy because I don't like to see anybody struggle if they do. Fortunately, my guys can
Yeah,
pick up work elsewhere in the music scene and pick up gigs. And Timo, my guitar player, he can front his own band, so those guys pick up work when they
mm,
can. But I've lost sleep in my career over things. There are moments when things might be a little thin, work might be thin. So it does. I'm very, very conscious of that. Yeah.
good. That's really good to hear. When you are like set out for a tour, are you do you prefer like some crowds overseas,
Excuse
crowds
me.
here? I mean, how does it differ? I mean, I've never toured in Europe or anything, but I've heard that the people are crazy, like over
Yeah.
crazy, like in love with the music overseas. I mean, how does it differ from
Um,
the States? I
well,
should say,
first they
like
talk a
festivals and
little
what,
different, right? No, there's a joke.
right?
They are very appreciative, very, very appreciative. And if you're at a festival, they're losing their minds for you. They especially love American blues,
Yeah,
especially if you're from the South. And whereas if you're in a more traditional venue setting rather than a festival, the audience is more quiet and more reserved when
mhm,
it comes to clapping. So, but that doesn't mean they're not into the music, and I think that's one of the things that took me quite a while with European touring to kind of get used to. Is a crowd that is quiet, and then we'll clap after the song. They won't scream and shout, but that's just out of respect. And
yeah,
and they
right.
they love the music, but they're not screaming and shouting. But if you're at a festival, they're screaming and shouting, having a good time, drinking, cheering, and so they appreciate it in those two ways, from what I've noticed. But I think the fact that they don't have as much access to it, or they haven't, it didn't
Yeah,
come from their area. I think they appreciate it just a little bit more in a lot of places.
yeah. And how are the venues? I mean, are
Hmm.
they really kind to you guys? And sometimes over
Right.
here it can be a little bit rough, but how are they
I'm sure
over
they
there?
have those over there as well, but we're usually really really well treated, very well, and very well respected, and they really like to take care of us.
Excellent. Now, when it comes to songwriting, I was interested to know, do you like how does your process work with songwriting? Do you and the guys all get together and you come up with, melodies and lyrics and music and all this kind of stuff? Or do you guys do it like piece by piece? I mean, do you bring something to the table that they bring something?
Yeah, you know,
What's your writing
sadly, we
process
don't get
like?
to get together as much as we want to, simply because we're playing so much. But um, typically in the past,
Yeah.
before I had my own recording software at the house and in my studio here, it would be I would have lyrics, and I would get together with my guitar player or the band at a rehearsal and go over it. Or sometimes it would even be, I'd get to the gig. This is years ago. I'd say, "Hey guys, I got these lyrics. Play, it's just 12 bars, three, 1-4-5 key of whatever, or
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll just do it on the
On the
fly."
fly.
And that's very
Yeah.
indicative of my Beale Street years, because that's just the way we did it. But
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, it's more I'll sit and I can play guitar and bass, very very limited, but I can get my ideas down a lot easier and come back to them, and I can build upon them, layered, put vocals and harmonica on top and things like that. So that's been more of the way
Yeah.
that I've written over the last, 6 years. And my most recent album, Long Shot,
Hmm.
was pretty much the songs were written and recorded, demoed that way.
Yeah. And what, like you mentioned, your Beale Street years, like if you can give me like an idea of how was that, you were when you were coming up, right? You were on
Yes.
Beale Street for
So
many years, and how was that for you? I mean, how did
it was
what kind of
incredible,
experiences
incredible.
do you have from it?
That's I
Yeah,
call that my university or college of the blues right there. And
yeah, right.
I was there 2003 through 2017ish, and yeah,
Wow.
of course we were touring as well. But it was great,
Yeah,
man. You really learn a lot of stuff down there. You really learn how to be a showman. You learn to appreciate the music.
yeah,
You learn to um, be broke sometimes in the dead of winter when tourists aren't there on Beale Street and you're playing for the tip bucket. So you learn a lot of excuse me, you learn a lot of
yeah,
humility, and at least that's what I
yeah.
did. But if it weren't for Beale Street, man, I don't know that that my career would have even been just what little bit it is today. And I think the fact that we have all these people throughout the world who come to Memphis and to Beale Street looking for blues music,
Yeah.
I think that really opened a lot of doors for different festivals, venues, opportunities, made a lot of new fans. And then, you see those fans come back, year after year, or you see them every few years. And
Yeah.
that's really a huge, been a huge asset with building my career.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, your stage show. I mean, how long did it take you to kind of perfect that? I mean, because a lot of people, they want to be musicians and they want to play this and that and the other thing, but they forget sometimes that
Right,
you do have to put on a show. It is a show. These people are paying
right.
money to come and see a show, and sometimes you go see a band and they just have no stage show whatsoever. I mean, how, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I paid $50 for that, but, how do you go about that now at this point in your career
Yeah.
against then,
Yeah, it's
when you were just
still,
cutting your
I'm
teeth?
always working on it, and it's never perfected in my opinion. I use the crowd as a barometer in my performances. Uh, one of my things,
Yeah,
I guess, one of my
yeah,
catchphrases is somebody say yeah, that kind of thing. You learn that from Beale Street. Somebody
yeah, yeah,
scream, or I really, I watched those guys on Beale Street, get the crowd involved, and I learned maybe subconsciously that that's how you're going to make money in your tip bucket. And so I took that as this is how you do it. But people are still, people still like to be entertained. And like you said, if people are, paying
definitely.
$50, even $10, $5, I still want those people
Yes,
to, feel like they got their money's worth out of it. And, I'm not I don't have the endurance that I had back in my 20s, but I still like to bring a very high impact, high energy show. And thankfully, my band It's a very big part of that, and they understand that. They like that as well. And I can lean on my guitar
Yeah.
player, or I can lean on my bass player, and lean on my drummer for different parts of the show. And I think it's not just harmonica blowing at you all night, harmonica, 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 and
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's always a work in progress, as you know. Yeah, yeah,
I do. Yeah, definitely. And what you just mentioned, like when you're playing pretty much for the tip bucket, and there's nobody in the crowd. I mean, how do you, as a working musician, I'm sure, you know, maybe there's times now that happens to you. I'm sure it happened back on Beale, a lot of times.
yeah.
I've experienced, playing
Right.
tables and chairs. It sucks. But how did you mentally prepare yourself for something like that? When you see it's happening, let's say you guys are going out there and you think you're killing it, right? And the people just leave, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now it's tables and chairs and the wait staff. So what's
Uh,
your way that you dealt with that?
it's
I'm just
hard not
interested
to
to know.
be offended. Yeah, it's been a while.
Probably
I
been a
mean, let's
while.
just say, yeah, I don't know the last time it happened. Thankfully, it's been a while, but you have to learn. I personally, I learned to not be angry about it. It's very easy, especially in
Yeah.
December or January, dead of winter, when nobody's there,
Yeah.
and then you're just sitting there playing and just looking out the door, waiting for somebody to come by, and they walk by or they stop, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, and then they leave, and it's just it's a vicious cycle, but you just
Yeah.
again you learn humility,
Yeah.
and there were times where we'd walk away with $11 each for a four-piece band, because you'd play for the tip bucket and
Yeah.
a meal, and so
Hmm.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people would tend to be upset about it, especially if you rely on it as your livelihood, like I have my entire life or career.
Yes.
But you just it's hard. It is hard playing for those tables and chairs because it's not as exciting. But that's and you probably will agree with what I'm going to say. That's when you really have to again lean on your band because you're wanting to play. I'm playing for my band, and
Yes.
they're playing for one another. You might not walk out with a lot of money,
Yep.
but you at least hopefully made good music, maybe. And those are good nights to try those new songs that we were talking about. So I think that
Absolutely.
that's a good way to utilize those. But it's easy to get pissed off about it. But you just have to try not to try not to
It
be.
is. Right. And don't
Yeah,
take it out
exactly.
on
Right,
the
right.
place.
Just take
Don't.
drink all the free alcohol that they're giving you and just be happy, right?
Yeah. Make
Mhm.
it a little bit easier to deal with. Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to ask you, earlier, we were talking about when you first got into the business. And so at what point did you start, um, touring, like just like really consistently, where you were like, okay, now I'm really in it, I'm a working
Excuse
musician,
me.
I'm setting up tours, I'm going for it, this is my livelihood, like you were saying before, like now this is my livelihood, I got to make it,
Uh,
when did that happen for you? 'Cause I know you spent some time on
sure.
Beale. I'm sure it had something to do with
Yeah,
Beale, but
we really started touring, started hitting the road probably 2005 and 2006. And that's when we
mm,
started getting out there more. And then Delta Highway was kind of in full swing around 2008. And I
yeah.
remember, it's funny you asked that because I remember one night where I said to my guitar player, I was like, it's getting to the point where people are actually showing up, we're actually getting, dozen people to show up to, every night. Yeah, yeah.
It's weird,
And
right?
so
Yeah.
I think I remember that conversation with Justin, and um, you know, we're just thankful that people are coming out. But once we start realizing it, and you're starting to go overseas, you're starting to get Blues Music Award nominations. We kind of
Mhm.
we're like, this is happening. It's happening. So I think it was the award nominations, and then headlining festivals, playing festivals, going overseas, things like that, and then you see, you go back from town to town while you're touring, and you see a lot of familiar faces. So I think that's
Yeah.
when we really started to notice it.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. It was always really nice to see that. Like you come to a place, you play
Yeah,
it, come there two, three, four times, and then the next thing you know, you're seeing the same faces, the same people, and they come up to you, and it's
right.
as if like they know you. It's like you're part of
Exactly.
their
Yeah.
thing,
And,
their clique, and
yeah,
like
and you're
wow, that's
achieving what
pretty
you're
cool.
supposed to if you're wanting to grow your brand and grow your fan base. And those people are
Right?
coming with your shirts and with your CDs to sign. They bought
Yeah.
online or yeah, it's
You're like,
pretty cool. I'm signing
wow, okay,
autographs. This is cool.
yeah, right. What was it
Ah,
like for you the first time you signed an autograph? You're like,
yeah, I don't
wow,
remember the
that's
exact time, but
badass. Yeah.
I remember one time I got stopped in a
So
store
weird, right?
after a gig, and I thought that was pretty cool. And that was actually before I moved to Memphis, so that was probably one of the first like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that's pretty cool. That dude knew who I was. He was at the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you play festivals, like when you are there any moments where you're like, oh my God,
Oh,
I love that guy. I can't believe he's playing on the same festival. Like, are there any moments
oh,
where you're
sure,
starstruck with
man.
with certain players?
Oh
And if
God,
so,
man,
who
I'll
are they?
tell you.
Who are the
There's been
people?
a lot. Yeah,
I'm sure it's a
God,
ton. Yeah.
we've done, one of my favorites is we did a festival in actually Mumbai, India in 2019. And it was the Mahindra Blues Festival. And it
Yeah.
was Charlie Musselwhite and Beth Hart, myself,
Wow.
and there was the Aaron Joy trio based out of Mumbai. And I remember just when you have those big dogs on there, it's just like you go to school. I make
Yeah.
sure I try to get a good state. If I go out front or I'm backstage or side stage, and I'm taking mental notes. And
Yeah.
there have been a lot
Yeah.
of those. Bobby Rush. Trying to think.
Oh wow.
There's just been
Wow.
so many, man. I can't think of them all right off the top of my head.
Have you played on the same
We
bill as
did, yeah.
Dennis at all?
Well, funny
Dennis or
enough, I've
Jason?
never played on same bill as Jason, but I've played with
Wow.
Dennis on Tampa Bay Blues Festival, and I can't remember if he
Oh
played
yeah.
before or after us, but Buddy Guy was on that bill, so that
Oh,
and that was the first time
nice.
I'd well, second time I'd met Buddy, and it was one of those kind of starstruck moments. And now I've
Yeah.
played with him three times,
Yeah,
or
I
he's
bet it was.
sat in with us three times at his club up in Chicago. And
Mhm.
so it's weird being on this
Yeah.
side, at 40 years old, as opposed to those 20 something years, those formidable years. And now it's looking
Yeah.
back, it's like, wow, I've been able to play with guys that are my heroes. And that's just, it's so
Right. How
crazy.
crazy
It's so
is
crazy. I
that?
remember my bass player after the last time Buddy Guy joined us on stage. After the gig, we were loading up. We'd load.
I'd flip out. I'd be like,
Right.
"What the
Yeah,
hell,
it's
buddy
great,
guy?
man.
Get out of
And
here, man!"
so I remember after that gig, the van was loaded up and we were leaving. Let's get our pictures in front of the sign, the marquee. And I remember my bass player just walking up. He's like, I just played with Buddy Guy. I just played with Buddy Guy. That really just happened. That happened. And so that made me proud to be able
Yeah,
to be a part of that with him. But
absolutely.
that's pretty much how I was feeling as well. First time.
That's great. That's great. I've had other friends of mine who've played with Buddy Guy, and they're the same way, man. It's like you just become like a
Yes,
child. You're like,
yes.
"Oh my God,
Yeah, man. And
Buddy
it's
freaking
unbelievable. I
Guy!"
had Gary Clark Jr. sat in with us on Bill Street, back
Oh
in
wow.
2012. That was one of the cool things about Bill
I
Street
mean,
is you never know who was going to pop through there. You never know who you're going to be on stage with at the end
yeah,
of the night. So that was one of the
for
treats of,
sure.
of Bill Street as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. Do you ever get to Austin? You
I've
ever
never
play
been to
Austin?
Austin.
Like, and how was that
My
crowd?
bass
Never?
player went to school there, but
Wow.
we just Texas.
Hmm.
We've only played Dallas and Houston, I believe, but never in Austin for some
Hmm.
reason. I don't know why.
Okay. And
Oh yeah,
Chicago, I'm
yeah,
sure you've hit
absolutely.
Chicago a
Numerous
bunch of
more
times.
times than I can count. And those are the three times. They're
How,
great, man. They're great
how the crowd
blues
is there?
lovers, but they know their stuff, and so you got to go in and deliver
Oh yeah,
because they're seeing these guys like Buddy Guy or Billy Branch or whoever those Chicago guys are. They're heavy, man. They're heavy. So you got to really go in you know,
Absolutely.
with the showing the respect to the blues, and that's something I always
Absolutely.
try to do, is show respect to the blues, and especially to the men and women who suffered a long time ago, more than you and I will ever suffer in our lives, to that created this music. So
Absolutely.
they're
Yep.
very in tune up there to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. It's a good segue to that because I was going to ask you about those the field recordings from and I always forget the damn guy's name.
Lomax. Yeah.
Alan Lomax. I asked Dennis about
Oh
that,
yeah.
and he was like, "Oh
I've
yeah, I've
heard a
heard
lot of
those.
that.
Have
Yeah.
you heard those?
Yeah.
Oh my God, man, that
Very,
is some
very
serious
historical
blues.
recordings. I mean, that's how Muddy Waters was
Very
first recorded and discovered.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, those are amazing. I was in a band back in like '05, I think it was. And I told the story to Dennis. I went over for rehearsal one time to the guitar player's house, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm excited. I got a new song." And he goes, "Forget that, man." He goes,
Oh yeah.
we're gonna sit down. I got something to listen to. You got to listen to this. You got to listen to this." I'm like, "What is it?" He
You're
goes,
like, this
"You
better
got to
be
listen to
good.
this." So he put it on, and I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Come on, man." I was floored. I was floored. I just was like, "Wow!" It was just sensational, you know. So, well, what you're saying, I mean, they paid the ultimate price, those guys. But let me tell you, the
Absolutely.
blues was
Yeah,
just
man. And
born
it's a
from that, you
beautiful
know.
art form that, that, like I said, it's my mission to continue what those people did for us. Yeah.
Like big time respect,
Yes.
to all those guys. That. I wanted to talk to you about your. I think it's your first album because it's the first one on your website,
Yeah.
which is "Songs of Love, Money, and Misery." And I've been listening to
Thanks,
that a
man. It's
lot, and I
raw.
really, really enjoy it.
Very raw. It's very
Really
raw.
good. What's that? It's very
Right,
raw.
man.
I love it. I love raw. I love that. Um, Especially the song Ida Lee. And I don't know if Ida Lee is a cover or not. And I'm pretty sure that it
Musically,
probably is,
obviously,
or
that's
is it
a
not?
progression that's been that. I mean, that's
Right.
the Highway 49, Dust My Broom kind of thing.
Correct.
Those are
Yeah.
original lyrics, though,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're original
Are
lyrics.
they?
And but again, the
Nice.
music is very,
Nice.
very traditional on that song.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
On that,
pretty
well, I
much.
think on that
There's a
album too. Like
lot of
it's
tradition.
very good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we go to This Time Another Year, another really, really solid album. How do you feel about those albums? Now that I don't know what year they were because I don't
Yeah.
see the years here, but now that you're far away from those albums, how does it feel? And do you listen back to them at all, ever? And how do you feel about them now, being the man you are at 40, rather than the
Right.
guy that recorded those back in the day?
I don't
How does it make you
listen
feel?
to. You know what? It's funny. The first album, "Songs of Love, Money, and Misery," was 2011, and that was recorded in just
Okay.
outside of Memphis in a garage studio in this house. We had this house.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with great vocalist, piano player Victor Wainwright. He's a blues guy. So we were
I am.
roommates for
Yes.
two and a
Yep.
half years, and he had this big house that he owned. I
Awesome.
think it was 5 bedrooms. It was all musicians that lived there.
Wow.
And we
Nice.
affectionately called it the Big Stink rather than the Big Pink, like the band. It smelled horrible. It was messy. We were,
Yeah, I'm sure.
food everywhere, all that stuff. But we recorded it in his little studio that he had at the time, and
Nice.
that was, very. If I could go back, I really, honestly, I'm thankful that you like it, and a lot of people say that as well. And I know you always have to start
Yeah,
somewhere, right? And that was my first solo release,
of
but
course.
I would love I would love to
Yeah,
do a lot of different stuff with that, and it was very, very, like I said,
for sure.
very lo-fi, I guess, and just very raw. But
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
that's the beauty of it, I think. It's a really nice album, and if you are a person that likes that kind of raw sound,
right,
it's right up a person like that's alley. I mean, when I heard it, I like this. It's really raw. It's
yeah, sure,
very bluesy. It's a nice
yeah.
introduction
I'm proud
to
of all
to
those
what you're
songs.
doing.
I wrote pretty much all of those songs, and a few of them were, a few of them were
Did you
co-writes, but
really? Wow.
I think This Time Another Year, which came out in 2013, that was the album that, as a solo
Yeah.
artist, that took off more than
Yeah.
Love, Money, Misery. And that was actually recorded at Ardent Studios in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's where
Okay.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Zeppelin had recorded there. A lot. It's a
Yes.
very, very famous studio, and we were very proud to record there. So
Yeah.
that album, I think, was a lot better. It was better produced, and I think there are a lot of great songs on that one. I mean, would I change things? Absolutely, but again, you go back
Well, of
and
course.
listen to them, and you have to say it's done. That album's recorded. It's out there. It's been out there. You can't change it now without remastering. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and you just have to just say to yourself, it's a record. It's called a record for a reason. It's a record in time of where you were. So that's the
That
way, at
moment.
least
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
excuse I tell myself.
No, I enjoy them, man. I'm kind of the mindset of like the more raw, the better. And you know what? Typically, when a musician or a band, and I think you could agree, when they make their first
Sure.
album, it's usually the most
Sure.
raw album that they make. Because they're brand new and they're full of piss
Yeah.
and vinegar, and
Budget, right?
it's just you don't have a budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you sit in a house and recording in the
Yeah.
hallways, and I've been there, I've done it. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. And then your next album, which was Live and Extended, I haven't listened to that album. I would love to hear it, but I haven't listened to it. But tell me
I
about
love
that album.
record.
Like, how did you feel about that one?
That was, I was more,
Yeah.
I was a better player, a better singer at that time. I was actually sick, or I shouldn't say sick, but I'd lost my voice earlier in that day, and we recorded that in Quebec City in Canada, and it was a nice,
Wow.
little theater, and
Awesome.
I didn't have my voice, and I tried. I was, hot tea, doing all the ginger stuff beforehand, lemon, honey,
Yeah, right.
cayenne pepper, and nothing worked, and so my voice is, one of the things on that I really wish was better, but it worked. It sounds bluesy, but I really like that record overall. It's one of my favorites. There's I feel
Awesome.
like the song "Elevate Me, Mama." It's an old slow blues song. That's actually a cover, and most of the songs on there are covers on that record because it's from our live show.
Was that done purposely, or you just were like, okay, this is going to be more of a cover album rather than
we did a lot of original songs in the show, but those are the ones that we felt just they happen to be the strong ones, the songs that are on there, and you have to leave some of them behind that you really want on there, and a lot of those were originals. But
yes,
I thought it was a good opportunity to bring some songs from our live show into the mix rather than re-recording songs again and again. But I think "Elevate Me, Mama" is probably my most favorite harp solo that I've ever recorded. I stand by.
Really? Wow. Okay. And when you do that live, I'm sure you do it live now, but how do you feel about it every time? Is it you just want to I can't wait to go out and do that song?
I love it. That song always takes me. I'm very guilty of closing my eyes when I play. I'm very guilty of that. But right. But you go into your own world, right? When you do that, and whether that's because you might be a little uncomfortable on stage at the moment, and you close your eyes and you can get it out, but right.
Well, you're not as vulnerable if you close your eyes,
and we should,
or you
well, that's very
be
true.
more vulnerable depending on how you look at it. I guess.
That song just takes me to this weird. I feel like I'm elevating. I feel like I'm 10 feet off the ground when I'm playing that. It's just such a slow, just traditional blues thing, and there's a lot of space to let the heart breathe, or to just play the hell out of it, and to weave in and out of those parts of the solo are it's always a treat for me.
When you wrote that song, what was the inspiration, let's say, for that song?
It's one of the covers. Yeah, it is. It's an old.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said it was. I thought you said you wrote it. Sorry about that.
That's an old John Lee Williamson tune, who is Sonny Boy Williamson #1. But I heard Gary Smith, an incredible West Coast harp player, do a version of that on an album, and so we kind of borrowed from that. And it's a great song to play, man. I wish.
My apologies. I thought I heard you say that it was your art. right. Then you came out with the long shot. And how do you? I mean, this is a well produced album, right? And so how do you
That's
feel about that
probably
one?
my most favorite. That between that and Live Extended, those two are my top two. That was actually the
Yeah.
first time I'd actually gone in, signed with a label to go in and do an album, and
Mhm.
we went up to
Yeah.
Dover, Dover, New Jersey. Which are you in Jersey or where are you at? Florida. How
I'm
close?
in
Oh yeah,
Florida.
so
I'm
you're
in
close,
Cape Coral,
right?
Florida.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
very
folks in
close to Jersey.
Jersey down
Right up
there,
the road.
probably where you are, right in Florida, right? So
Oh yeah,
yeah, so we went into
yeah.
the studio up in Jersey, just outside of New York, and we went in. We did about 6 days, 7 days there, and it was the first time really
Nice.
working with the label and a legitimate producer. Uh, Whereas the other ones had been co-produced by myself and some other folks, and it was
Yeah.
I actually was on. I wasn't having to spend the money, so it wasn't, clock watch. It wasn't a lot of clock
Yes.
watching, or what time is it? What's
Yeah.
our, what time is it? We got to be out of here by X amount of time. So it was nice to not be
Right.
rushed, to not feel rushed, and if we needed an extra,
You can have that
yes,
relaxing kind of like, okay, we can do
exactly. So
at our
that really, I
pace.
think,
Yeah.
helped with that. There are things, of course, that I would want to change if we had a chance to go back and do it.
Of
But
course.
it was a great experience. I got to work with Ben Elliott, was a great producer. God rest his soul. And John
Mm.
Ginty, who is an incredible, keyboardist, and he played keys on it. He co-produced it with us. So it was really a
Awesome.
great learning experience, and it felt nice. And I think
Yeah.
we had good success with that album when it came out, as far as charting and
Yeah.
sales and Billboard charts.
Good.
So yeah, I'm proud of it, man. And
Good.
that's the album that's less traditional. That's a
Awesome.
less traditional album in most people's opinion.
Hmm.
And we wanted to kind of do more of the rootsy blues rock kind of thing, but not lose sight of
Yeah.
the traditional aspect of it.
Right. And how do you like how do you feel about like coming out with another album? Like when do you think you're going to be
Yeah,
doing that? Because that's the
yeah.
most recent album of
We
yours.
sadly we had a two record deal, and then Ben passed away in early 2020 from cancer, and he was really the
Oh
guy
yes.
behind
Okay.
that label, and so the label folded,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
yeah, so we didn't get to
sorry,
do the
man.
second one, but we did a single. I released a single digitally, obviously, back in
Hmm.
January of last year. Excuse me, this year, and we'd love to get back in the studio. It's just with the whole pandemic, every time we have plans to do something, or you have the budget for it, something just kind of dings you, and then it's like, oh, I got to put it on hold.
Yeah.
So we're it's been a lot of demo recording and writing, and that's one of the things my band is getting ready to focus on during this a lot of this off time, is getting new material for next year and for the live show, and to maybe, or we will hopefully shop it to different labels. And the thing is, now you can, we have
Good.
decent recording software at home, and so if we don't get a label, that's okay, but we can still get good sounds at home
Yeah.
and in our studios. So we
Yep.
may end up doing that. I'm not exactly sure. So we'll have to see what happens. But it's so expensive to
Yeah.
make records, if to do it with a publicity budget,
Yeah.
promo budget,
Yeah.
and to do it right. So
Yeah. I've heard a lot of musicians are saying like,
yeah,
listen, let's just put out singles, just put them out digitally, like you're saying. Forget about the whole album, just put them out,
yeah,
separately.
you
I've seen a lot
you're
of
right.
artists doing
I
that,
think in the blues world it's kind of a different. It's a different. Yeah,
tradition.
yeah.
It's
So you don't get a
more
lot of
traditional. Yeah.
a lot of the folks just especially our crowd is a lot of 60, 70-year-olds, and not to say they don't
Yeah.
know technology, but a
Yeah.
lot of them still like to they're
Right.
audiophiles, and they like to have the actual physical
Yeah.
product. So I think that's one thing that
Yeah.
the blues genre hasn't really fully embraced, for lack of a better word. But
Right.
there are a lot of folks that are doing it,
100%.
and we're probably I'd hoped to put more out this past year, but we weren't able to make it happen. But Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the whole mentality of putting out singles throughout however long of a period of time, and then releasing it as a full length album is a great idea. A lot of folks are doing that, or just
Yeah.
teasing a few songs as a single. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really the
Yeah.
industry's in this weird change, and of course a lot of folks are trying to adapt to the whole streaming and downloading and that kind of thing. But more of the streaming is more the thing that's kind of we're kind of having to roll with and learn a lot about.
Yeah. Yeah. You're kind
You
of
are,
forced to
yeah.
adapt to the
And streaming,
environment. You know.
I was just
I
gonna
want
say,
to talk.
and
Go
that's
ahead.
not to knock people like Spotify fully. They could pay better, of
Yeah.
course, but
Oh, yeah.
um,
Of course.
you know, we've got a lot of fans that have come to shows and been turned on to us by Spotify or some other streaming music. So those people come, and a lot of them will buy merchandise, buy a ticket, buy a CD,
Yeah.
and we're really thankful for people that do that. But yeah, so you kind of have to learn. You have to adaptation is the key to survival. So we just try to adapt, right?
That's right. Do you feel like, would you say that people are
Not
still buying CDs nowadays? Like mostly, or
not
at your
as
shows, or
much.
not
We do
really?
see a decline, and
Yeah.
that's obviously
Yeah.
globally as well. But they're not
Of-
buying as many as they used to, and that really, for a lot of low level
Yeah.
bands, roots bands, blues bands specifically, we've relied a lot on selling CDs from the bandstand, and when those numbers go
Of
down,
course.
sometimes 40%, it's really it really makes it tougher for that bottom line. And
Yep.
if you have your band on a set guarantee per show or salary, you really do count on merchandise sales.
Yeah.
So with that, you learn to
Absolutely.
you know get more merchandise, apparel, things like that, and people are really into
Right.
buying that. So that's something we've embraced.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because the apparel most times is more money
Yeah.
than the CDs, but they're willing to fork out that money to have
Right.
a nice Brandon Santini shirt.
Yeah.
Kind of
Well, it's great,
cool,
man.
in a way. So maybe you're not getting those sales CD wise, but
You are
merchandise
absolutely,
wise, yeah, you're
and
you're getting it.
it has
I
been
hope
a
that's working for
huge,
you.
huge blessing. Getting merchandise and different
Good.
lines of shirts and things like that. And people,
Yeah.
come to the shows, or you'll see them, take pictures on Facebook and put it on there, or they're walking around to wherever they are in their daily life, and they're walking around with your band shirt on, your face on it, and so that they're essentially walking
Yeah.
billboards. I think
Absolutely.
it's fascinating that people want to buy something with my name and face on it. I mean, but I love it, and
Kind of
because
weird.
shirts and apparel are more expensive to make per
Yep.
rather than CDs, but I think that's why
Yep.
they have to be priced more. But it's been a one thing we've been trying to work on
Good.
more options with.
Awesome.
Yeah,
You were mentioning your single that you put out in 2022.
yeah,
It
right.
was "Don't Shake the Devil's Hand," right? Really, really well done.
Yeah,
I think
Victor and
Victor
John
Wainwright's on
Linton.
that with
Yeah.
you. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, really good, man. I was listening to
See,
this in the car
that's
before.
my
I was like, "Holy
that's
shit,
my
this sounds
favorite
great."
recording that I've yeah. I mean,
Is
definitely
it?
one of them. We recorded that all. Let's see, I did the harp here at my house, and I did the vocals
Oh,
at a
wow.
waterfront studio in here in Springfield, Illinois, and my drummer did the drums at his place, 30 miles from here, and the bass player and guitar
So crazy.
did their tracks in the studio as well. So, and then Victor recorded his home studio, and John did the same. So we're
Good.
flying in tracks, and it's beautiful that we can do that now. That's one of the cool things about technology.
Isn't it amazing how that happens, man? Amazing. It's so, and you would never know that if you hadn't told me that.
Oh
I
no,
would
well, I'm just
never know.
kidding. We
Seriously.
did it in a
All
in
right.
a multi-million-dollar studio, right? That's what
Yeah,
we
right.
did.
Right, right. Of course. Of course.
Thank you.
But it really came out
I'm proud of
really
that.
well, I
That's
think.
that's a
Yeah,
cool little.
no
That was the
problem.
song that that we were doing the single experiment with, and
Well, yeah. I mean, did it
yeah, I feel
work?
like it did.
It
It's
worked, right?
people love that song, and you're obviously not selling individual copies of singles on the
Right.
bandstand, but people downloaded it, and it's gotten a lot of streams. So I feel like it's done pretty good, and we're proud
Good.
of it. I love playing that song too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good song, man. I mean, we have a ton of good songs. I don't expect anything less. Because I've been listening to a lot of it. And it's just good, man. You're a really good
Well,
musician, and
thanks,
I don't
man.
know.
I'm
I don't know
seeing
what else to say.
really good musicians. I'm seeing all these great musicians pop up in our that are joining it here.
I
We got Ken Valdez,
saw,
Sugar
yeah,
Mill Slim, John Clifton. It's great. Let
Mason is
Oh
saying,
yeah, I
"Come
love
back to the
that
helm in
place. I don't
lacrosse."
remember I didn't catch the name, but the Helm. Yeah, that's
Mason. I can't see
right
Mason.
on.
HNE
I tell you
Prude.
what,
Prod.
lacrosse.
Yeah.
That the Helm Bar. That's a cool little. That's one of those cool little stages, or it's not even a stage. It's just one of those cool little venues that, as a, as as a blues band, you go in there and they love you. And we set up
That's
the
awesome.
ceiling's probably about a foot above our heads, and it's explosively loud on stage or on the floor there.
Yeah.
You're in a corner,
Yeah.
and
Right.
the
Yeah.
bathroom and the cooler are you have to go walk between myself and the drummer and the bass player who stage left to get to the bathroom, and it's just beautiful. And
Awesome.
and and we
It's just
speaking of that tip
how it
bucket,
is,
we
and it's
just set up
great.
a toll right there for people, a bathroom toll for people to go through, and that's just a fun town. Wisconsin
That's
people
cool.
are great.
You ever been to? You played at Fort
I did
Myers
a
at the
long time
Buckingham
ago, but
Blues
we play
Bar?
more at the Barrel Room
Did you?
downtown. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I love it.
Yeah, awesome. How you like it over there?
Man, they got hit by the storm, of course,
Yeah,
really bad. So I think they're out for five
I
months at least.
know. Yeah.
But
Oh,
good crowd
I'm
there.
sure.
Florida's just one of those states that's been so good to us over the years because it's such a great blues
Yeah.
scene, and there have been a lot of great places to tour through there and stay busy for 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, doing
Yeah.
the whole state's freaking huge. So yeah, definitely keep. We used to play one of the bands I was in, Bobby and the Renegades. We used to play at Buckingham a lot, and it was a great crowd.
Right.
You talk about crowds, that really love their blues and they know their blues. It's a small, you know what it is, a small kind of rickety place. It's not all that great, but you go in there, it's always packed. The people are up
and
shouting around and they're getting
and
into
a
it, and
donkey that
it's
drinks
just
beer.
nothing like it. And a donkey drinks beer.
Yeah, man.
You're
No, it's
totally
a
right
cool
about
place,
that.
man. I wish Bucky. Yeah, that's
Bucky,
right.
I think
Yeah.
his name is.
I wish we had played
Yeah,
there more. I hope we get to have that opportunity again. But yeah, that whole neck of the woods that Fort Myers and down where you are just been wonderful to us.
awesome, man. Do you have other places throughout the country that like when you get a gig there, you're like, oh man, I love it. You're so excited to go
Sure,
there. I mean, I'm sure it's a
sure.
lot
Yeah,
of
there
places.
there are quite a few of those. Gosh, man, I'm trying to think. Everywhere we go, pretty much is great, and I'm not just saying that, but Florida
Yeah,
is always one we look forward to, and we usually hit it a couple times a year. Chicago's great, as we mentioned, and I love going back to
yeah,
Memphis. I love getting up to New England as well. They're really great
awesome.
to us up that way.
How's Canada? I mean, does Canada have a
Yes, they
good
do,
blues scene
man.
up there or
Well,
no?
at least when we go through there, they're really good to us. We do Ontario mostly,
Yeah,
and we've done Quebec.
yeah,
We recorded the record, and one of my favorite
yep.
places to play is actually the Edmonton Blues Festival, way out in
Really?
Edmonton. And man,
Yeah,
I mean, you talk about several thousand people that are right on the stage, just screaming for you, and it's like, all right,
yeah,
this is pretty cool.
yeah. Pretty cool, man. All right, well, I guess we'll wrap up, in a minute here. But yeah, I mean, is there anything that you'd like to say? Anything you want to promote that's
Yeah,
coming up, or anything like that? I would love to hear
my
it.
website's brandonsantini.com, and you can find me on Facebook. You're here on Instagram, and we've got a good year coming up. We're going to be touring in support of the 10th anniversary of This Time Another Year. It's hard to believe that's, yeah. And so it's going to
Awesome.
kind of be This Time Another Decade, basically, is kind of what we're affectionately calling it. But
Yeah.
we're going to do some special stuff with that, and we have some intention to
Good.
hopefully get it out on vinyl and to re-record some of those
Nice.
songs acoustically with the exact crew of
Good.
musicians in Memphis. So we're going to do
Nice.
that. That's the plans, and we're going to be just hitting the road a lot this coming year. But I'm just thankful to everyone for all their support, and there's a lot of great merchandise at the website and a lot of great music. And even if you
Yeah.
don't buy anything,
Yeah.
just give me a high five or fist bump when you see me. Yeah,
Come on by.
I love seeing the folks, and I'm always thankful.
Cool, man. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's
Yeah,
been a pleasure for me.
yeah.
Hopefully you had a good time, and
I'd
maybe
love to come
sometime
back, man.
come on back. Thank,
Thank you.
thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great night. And you know what? Have
You
a great
do
Christmas and all
you
that
do the
kind of
same,
good
my
stuff.
friend.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year,
I'll
all
let
that.
you know when we're coming down to your neck of the woods, man. Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah, please. That'd be
Thanks for
awesome.
having me.
Thanks, Brandon. You, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. All right. Take care, man. Oh, I'm going to stay on for a minute. Brandon Santini, nice guy, great musician. If you would like to go to his website, it's brandonsantini.com. Check him out on Facebook. Check him out on Instagram here. This will be, I think this is going to be my last show for the year. And I don't have anything else coming up. No other things booked until the middle of, I think the middle of January. So if you want to see anybody on the show that you think of, any musicians, or it doesn't have to be musicians, just anyone, that's in a creative situation, please let me know. Just go ahead and send me a DM. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. Happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody. And I'm just going to sign off maybe for the last time for this year. So thanks everyone for hanging out. I appreciate it. Have a great night.